Hey warriors, there's a kind of strength that doesn't shout, doesn't boast, and doesn't seek attention. It is the strength of silence. In a world that constantly tells you to speak louder, to argue harder, and to prove yourself in front of everyone, silence feels like rebellion. But in truth, silence is not weakness. It is power, because it allows your energy to stay intact, your focus to remain sharp, and your victories to be built away from the noise. Think about this. Most people lose themselves not because they lack ability, but because they waste their energy fighting meaningless battles, responding to every insult, explaining every move, defending every choice. The more they talk, the less they build. The more they react, the weaker they become. True strength lies in holding back, in choosing wisely where to put your voice, and in letting results speak louder than words. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best answer to anger is silence." What he meant was not just ignoring others, but refusing to let their noise invade your peace. Because silence is not empty, it is full of control, full of focus, and full of preparation for victory. When you stay silent, you train yourself not to give in to distractions. When you stay focused, you direct your energy toward what truly matters. And when you combine both, silence and focus, victory becomes not just possible, but inevitable. This journey is not easy. People will test you. They will misunderstand your silence. They will try to pull you into arguments, gossip, and petty conflicts. But the Stoic path reminds us that wisdom is knowing what deserves your energy and what deserves your silence. In this video, we will go through 9 powerful lessons tied to Stoicism. Lessons that will help you practice silence, protect your focus, and secure victory in life. These are not empty ideas, but truths you can live by every single day. Each one will help you see how silence isn't just the absence of noise. It is the presence of strength. So as we move forward, open your heart, open your mind, and let these words sink in deeply. Because when you learn the art of silence and focus, you don't just survive the noise of the world, you rise above it. Before we continue, I want to remind you, don't skip any part of this video. Every single lesson builds on the next, and missing one might mean missing the very wisdom you need right now. Before we continue, drop this in the comments to set the tone. My silence makes me powerful. Number 1. Silence guards your energy. Your energy is your most precious resource, and most people are hemorrhaging it without even realizing it. Every unnecessary argument, every reactive comment, every time you feel compelled to defend yourself against criticism that doesn't even matter, you're giving away pieces of your power to people who have no right to it. Think about your typical day. How much energy do you spend on conversations that go nowhere? How much mental bandwidth gets consumed by trying to convince people who have already made up their minds? How much emotional fuel gets wasted on reactions to situations that will be forgotten by next week? When you choose silence over unnecessary engagement, you're not being antisocial, you're being smart. You're recognizing that your energy is finite, and every word you speak, every reaction you have, every emotional response you give is an investment. The question is, are you investing in assets that grow, or are you throwing your energy into black holes that give nothing back? The most powerful leaders throughout history understood this principle deeply. They spoke when their words could create change, and they stayed silent when speaking would only drain their reserves. Abraham Lincoln famously said very little during cabinet meetings, listening carefully before offering his thoughts. When he did speak, his words carried weight because they came from a place of preserved energy and careful consideration. But this isn't just about big moments. It's about the small daily choices that either build your energy reserves or deplete them. When someone tries to drag you into their drama, silence is your shield. When social media tries to pull you into outrage cycles, silence is your sanctuary. When your ego wants to prove a point that doesn't need proving, silence is your salvation. Here's what happens when you start guarding your energy through strategic silence. Your thoughts become clearer because they're not cluttered with reactive noise. Your emotions become more stable because they're not constantly being triggered by external chaos. Your decision-making improves because you're operating from a place of fullness rather than depletion. The ancient Stoics called this reserve clause thinking, always keeping something in reserve, never fully depleting your resources on any single engagement. It's like being a master chess player who never shows all their pieces at once, always keeping strategic options available for when they truly matter. But guarding your energy isn't just about what you don't do, it's about what you choose to do instead. When you're not wasting energy on meaningless battles, you have more to invest in meaningful growth. When you're not scattered across a dozen different arguments, you can focus intensely on the projects and relationships that actually move your life forward. This is where the real transformation happens. People start noticing that you're different. They can't quite put their finger on it, but there's something about your presence that feels more solid, more grounded, more powerful. You're not reactive anymore. You're responsive. You're not defensive anymore. You're confident. You're not trying to prove anything anymore. You simply are. The energy you once spent trying to control other people's opinions, you now invest in controlling your own responses. The emotional fuel you once burned on temporary frustrations, you now channel into permanent improvements. The mental bandwidth you once scattered across meaningless distractions, you now concentrate into laser-focused attention on what truly matters. And here's the beautiful paradox. The less you say, the more people listen when you do speak. The less you react, the more your responses matter when you do respond. The less energy you waste on small things, the more power you have for big things. Your silence becomes a force field that protects your most valuable asset. Not your time, not your money, but your life energy itself. And when you guard that energy fiercely, when you invest it wisely, when you spend it only on what aligns with your highest values and deepest purposes, victory becomes not just possible, but inevitable. Because at the end of the day, the person with the most energy, focused in the right direction, wins. Not the person who talks the most, argues the best, or reacts the fastest. The person who has preserved their power for when it really counts. Type this below if you're ready to protect your strength. My silence protects my energy. Number 2, focus separates you from distractions. Here's a brutal truth nobody wants to admit. You're not failing because you're not talented enough, smart enough, or lucky enough. You're failing because you can't focus for more than 5 minutes without getting distracted by something that doesn't matter. And in a world designed to steal your attention, that's exactly why 99% of people will never reach their potential. But here's where it gets interesting. The same technology that's destroying most people's ability to focus can actually make you unstoppable if you know how to use it right. While everyone else is drowning in notifications, updates, and digital noise, you can become the person who cuts through all that garbage like a hot knife through butter. Seneca said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." He wasn't talking about living longer. He was talking about living deeper, about focusing so intensely on what matters that you get more done in one focused hour than most people do in an entire scattered day. Think about this for a second. What if you could only check your phone 3 times a day? What if you could only have one conversation at a time without thinking about 5 other things? What if you could work on one project for 2 straight hours without your mind jumping to what you're going to eat for lunch? You'd become a different person. You'd become dangerous. Your brain physically changes based on what you pay attention to, Every time you let yourself get distracted, you're literally rewiring your brain to be more distractible. But every time you choose focus over distraction, you're building mental muscle that compounds over time. Here's what focus really is. It's not just concentration. It's the ability to say no to everything except the one thing that will move your life forward right now. It's having such clarity about your priorities that distractions don't even tempt you anymore. They're not interesting. They're irrelevant. I'm going to tell you something that might hurt to hear, but you need to hear it. That social media scroll you do for just 5 minutes that turns into 2 hours, that's not relaxation. That's self-sabotage. Those news articles you read that make you angry about things you can't control, that's not staying informed. That's mental pollution. Those conversations you have that drain your energy and lead nowhere, that's not being social. That's being scattered. Real focus is ruthless. It's cutting out everything that doesn't serve your highest vision for your life. It's protecting your attention like it's your most valuable possession, because it is. Warren Buffett, one of the most successful investors in history, keeps his calendar almost empty, not because he doesn't have opportunities, but because he's learned that saying no to good things is how you say yes to great things. But here's the part that'll change everything for you. When you develop real focus, you don't just get more done, you become magnetic. People are drawn to focused individuals because focus is so rare. When someone can actually listen to you without checking their phone, when someone can work on a project without constantly switching tasks, when someone can have a conversation without their mind wandering, that person stands out like a lighthouse in a storm. Right now, while you're watching this video, how many other things is your mind thinking about? That text you need to send, that problem at work, what you're going to do later. If your mind is anywhere except right here, right now, absorbing these words and thinking about how to apply them, you're proving my point. Focus isn't a talent you're born with or without. It's a skill you develop through deliberate practice. Every time you catch your mind wandering and bring it back to what you're supposed to be doing, you're doing mental push-ups. Every time you choose to finish one task completely before starting another, you're building focus muscle. Every time you put your phone in another room while you work, you're training yourself to be undistracted. Once you develop real focus, everything else becomes easier. Decision-making becomes faster because you're not considering irrelevant options. Goal achievement becomes inevitable because you're not wasting energy on activities that don't move you forward. Peace becomes your natural state because you're not constantly being pulled in different directions by things that don't actually matter. Your focused attention is your superpower in a distracted world. While everyone else is scattered, you're concentrated. While everyone else is reactive, you're intentional. While everyone else is busy, you're productive. And that's how you separate yourself from the pack. Number 3, victory belongs to the patient. Let me ask you something that might sting a little. How many times have you quit something right before it was about to pay off? How many times have you given up on a goal because results didn't come as fast as you wanted? How many times have you let impatience rob you of victories that were practically in your hands? Success is not about being the fastest, the smartest, or even the most talented. It's about being the last one standing. It's about having the patience to keep going when everyone else taps out. It's about understanding that real victory isn't a sprint. It's a marathon where most people quit at mile 2. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote something that reveals the secret to his unshakable strength. Confine yourself to the present. Not because the present is always pleasant, but because it's the only place where you have power. Impatient people live in the future, always worried about results. Patient people live in the process, always focused on what they can control right now. Think about the most successful people you know. I mean truly successful, not just Instagram famous. They all share one trait that separates them from everyone else. They can delay gratification like it's a superpower. While everyone else wants everything right now, they're willing to plant trees today that won't bear fruit for years. They understand something that impatient people never learn. Compound interest doesn't just apply to money, it applies to everything. Every skill you develop compounds over time. Every good habit you build compounds over time. Every relationship you invest in compounds over time. But here's the catch. You only get the compound effect if you stick around long enough to collect it. Most people quit during the flat part of the curve, right before the exponential growth kicks in. James Clear, the author who studied habit formation for years, discovered something fascinating. Most people overestimate what they can accomplish in a day and underestimate what they can accomplish in a year. They want to lose 30 pounds in 30 days, but they won't commit to losing 2 pounds per month for 15 months. They want to build a business overnight, but they won't show up consistently for 500 days straight. Patience isn't passive waiting. Real patience is active persistence. It's showing up every single day, even when you don't feel like it. It's trusting the process when you can't see the results yet. It's having faith in future you when present you wants to quit. The ancient Stoics called this amor fati, love of fate. Not just accepting what happens, but actually embracing the timeline that success requires. They understood that wanting things to happen faster than they naturally unfold is like trying to force a flower to bloom. You'll kill it before you get to enjoy it. Here's the brutal reality about patience. It's not fair. Some people will get lucky breaks. Some people will have advantages you don't have. Some people will achieve in months what takes you years. But here's what's also true. The people who build their success on patience create something that can't be taken away. Lucky breaks can disappear. Advantages can vanish. But the character, skills, and wisdom you develop through patient persistence, that's yours forever. Every single day, you're competing against two types of people. Those who want everything right now, and those who are willing to work for what they want over time. Guess which group has more people? Guess which group has more success? The math is simple. If you can just outlast the impatient majority, you're already ahead of 90% of your competition. But patience isn't just about achieving external goals. It's about becoming the type of person who can handle success when it comes. Most people aren't ready for the success they say they want because they haven't developed the patience to sustain it. They want the million-dollar business without the skills to manage it. They want the perfect relationship without the emotional maturity to maintain it. They want the dream life without the character to deserve it. Patient people don't just achieve more, they become more. Every month of consistent effort changes you. Every season of staying committed when others quit builds your confidence. Every year of choosing long-term vision over short-term comfort creates an unshakable belief in your own ability to achieve whatever you set your mind to. Victory doesn't belong to the swift. It doesn't belong to the loud. It doesn't belong to the lucky. Victory belongs to the patient, to those who can endure, persist, and keep showing up long after the motivation has faded and only discipline remains. The question isn't whether you can succeed. The question is whether you can wait for success to unfold on its natural timeline instead of demanding it on yours. Number 4, silence strengthens self-control. Here's something that'll blow your mind. Every time you speak without thinking, you're literally making yourself weaker. Every time you react instead of respond, you're training yourself to be controlled by external forces. Every time you let your emotions spill out through your words, you're giving away the very power you need to change your life. But here's the flip side, and this is where it gets exciting. Every time you pause before you speak, you're building self-control muscle. Every time you choose silence over reaction, you're becoming more powerful. Every time you keep your mouth shut when your emotions want to explode, you're developing the kind of inner strength that separates legends from ordinary people. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus had something incredible to say about this. First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. But here's what he really meant. Before you can control your actions, you have to control your words. Before you can control your words, you have to control your thoughts. And it all starts with the discipline of strategic silence. Think about the last time someone really made you angry. What did you want to do? Probably tear them apart with your words, right? Put them in their place. Make them understand how wrong they were. Make them feel as bad as they made you feel. But what if I told you that the moment you opened your mouth to react, you already lost? What if I told you that your silence in that moment would have been your greatest victory? Here's what most people don't understand about self-control. It's not about suppressing yourself. It's about choosing your battles so strategically that you win before the fight even starts. When someone tries to trigger you and you don't take the bait, you've just demonstrated more power than any argument could ever give you. You've shown that their emotions can't control your actions. Navy SEALs have a saying, "Slow is smooth, smooth is fast." They understand that in high-pressure situations, the person who can stay calm and think clearly has every advantage over the person who reacts emotionally. The same principle applies to every area of your life. The person with self-control doesn't need to prove they're right. They just are. They don't need to win every argument. They win the only argument that matters, the one with themselves. Every time you choose silence over reaction, you're literally rewiring your brain for greater self-control. You're creating new neural pathways that make it easier to pause, think, and respond strategically instead of emotionally. You're turning yourself into the kind of person who can handle any situation with grace and power. Here's where this gets really interesting. People who master the art of strategic silence don't just control their words, they control their entire environment. When you don't react to drama, drama stops seeking you out. When you don't engage with negative people, they lose interest in trying to affect you. When you don't defend yourself against every criticism, people start respecting your confidence. The most successful negotiators in the world know this secret. Silence is more powerful than any argument. When you make an offer and then stay quiet, the other person feels compelled to fill the silence, usually by accepting your terms or making concessions. When someone tries to manipulate you and you respond with calm silence, they reveal their true intentions while you maintain all your power. But here's the deepest truth about silence and self-control. They're not just tools for dealing with other people, they're tools for mastering yourself. Every urge you don't act on immediately makes you stronger. Every emotion you don't express impulsively gives you more control over your internal state. Every word you don't speak in anger preserves your energy for words that actually matter. Your silence isn't emptiness, it's fullness. It's being so complete within yourself that you don't need to fill every moment with words. It's being so confident in your position that you don't need to defend it constantly. It's being so strong internally that external chaos can't shake your inner peace. The person with self-control doesn't avoid conflict. They engage with it strategically. They don't suppress their emotions, they direct them purposefully. They don't stay silent because they're weak. They stay silent because they're strong enough to choose when their voice will have maximum impact. Number 5. Focus turns pain into strength. I'm going to share something with you that might sound crazy at first, but stick with me because this could change everything. The same experiences that are breaking other people right now, the failures, the setbacks, the disappointments, the pain. Those exact same experiences can become the fuel that makes you unstoppable, but only if you know how to focus on the right things. Here's what separates people who get crushed by adversity from people who get forged by it. Focus. Not positive thinking. Not pretending everything's fine. Not trying to avoid pain. Focus. The ability to find the lesson, the growth, the opportunity hidden inside every difficult experience and laser in on that instead of the hurt. Marcus Aurelius, remember, this guy literally had the weight of the entire Roman Empire on his shoulders, wrote something that'll give you chills. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. He wasn't talking about some feel-good philosophy. He was talking about a practical strategy for turning obstacles into advantages. Every single person who's achieved something extraordinary has this in common. They got good at extracting value from pain. They learned to focus on what they could control instead of what they couldn't. They discovered that the same event that destroys one person can strengthen another. The only difference is where they direct their attention. Right now, you're dealing with something difficult. Maybe it's a relationship that ended. Maybe it's a job you lost. Maybe it's a goal you failed to achieve. Maybe it's a health issue you're facing. Most people focus on what they lost, what went wrong, what isn't fair. But what if you focused on what you're gaining, what you're learning, what you're becoming? The ancient Stoics had a practice that sounds brutal, but creates unbreakable people. They would deliberately imagine losing everything they valued, their wealth, their health, their loved ones, not to be negative, but to build emotional resilience. They understood that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Suffering comes from focusing on what you can't control. Strength comes from focusing on what you can. Pain is not your enemy. Pain is information. It's your internal guidance system telling you that something needs to change. Physical pain tells you to protect your body. Emotional pain tells you to examine your expectations, your attachments, your strategies. Mental pain tells you to question your beliefs, your assumptions, your approach. But most people do exactly the wrong thing with pain. They try to numb it, avoid it, or make it someone else's fault. They focus on why it hurts instead of what it's teaching. They ask, "Why me?" instead of "How can I use this?" They waste their energy fighting against what's already happened instead of using that energy to create what happens next. Michael Jordan, arguably the greatest basketball player ever, was cut from his high school basketball team. Instead of focusing on the rejection, he focused on the gap between where he was and where he wanted to be. That pain of being cut became the fuel for one of the most legendary work ethics in sports history. The same experience that might have ended another kid's dreams became the beginning of Jordan's greatness. Here's what focused people understand about pain. It's temporary, but the strength you build from it is permanent. Every difficult conversation you navigate makes you better at communication. Every failure you recover from increases your resilience. Every loss you endure deepens your appreciation for what you have. Every challenge you overcome expands your confidence in your ability to handle whatever comes next. But the key is focus. You have to consciously direct your attention to the growth instead of the hurt. You have to deliberately look for the lesson instead of dwelling on the loss. You have to intentionally ask, "What is this making possible?" instead of, "Why is this happening to me?" The Stoics called this the discipline of desire, wanting what happens to you instead of wanting what doesn't happen to you, not because everything that happens is good, but because everything that happens can be used for good if you focus on the right aspects of it. Your pain right now, whatever it is, contains the seeds of your future strength. But those seeds will only grow if you focus on them, if you water them with attention instead of drowning them with self-pity. if you nurture them with curiosity instead of poisoning them with resentment. The same fire that melts butter hardens steel. The same pressure that crushes coal creates diamonds. The same experiences that break weak people make strong people stronger. The difference isn't in what happens to you, it's in what you focus on when it happens. Number 6. Silence protects your vision. Here's something that'll shock you. The biggest threat to your dreams isn't failure, competition, or lack of resources. It's other people's opinions about what you're trying to achieve. And the moment you start talking about your vision before you've made it bulletproof through action, you're basically handing loaded weapons to people who might not even mean you harm. Think about it. How many times have you gotten excited about a goal, shared it with friends or family, and then watched your enthusiasm drain away as they started poking holes in your plan? That's risky. Are you sure you can do that? What if it doesn't work out? They're not trying to hurt you. They're trying to protect you from disappointment. But in the process, they're killing your dreams with their doubt. Steve Jobs understood this better than almost anyone. When he was developing the iPhone, he kept the project so secret that even most Apple employees didn't know what they were working on. He knew that revolutionary ideas sound crazy to people who aren't ready for revolution. He protected his vision through silence until it was strong enough to survive public scrutiny. The ancient Stoic philosopher Seneca wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." What he meant was that when you're birthing a new vision for your life, you have to let go of seeking approval from people who are still living in your old reality. Your vision doesn't need their understanding. It needs your unwavering commitment. Here's what happens when you share your dreams too early. First, other people project their own limitations onto your possibilities. They can't see themselves doing what you want to do, so they assume you can't do it either. Second, you start second-guessing yourself. Their doubt becomes your doubt. Their fear becomes your fear. Their small thinking starts shrinking your big dreams. But there's an even more dangerous trap. When you talk about your goals, your brain gets a little hit of satisfaction, like you've already achieved them. Psychologists call this social reality. Your mind can't tell the difference between talking about doing something and actually doing it. So, you get the emotional reward without putting in the work, which kills your motivation to actually make it happen. Real visionaries protect their vision like a mother protects her newborn. They don't parade it around asking for everyone's opinion. They nurture it in private, feed it with consistent action, and let it grow strong enough to survive in the real world before exposing it to outside influences. Elon Musk spent years developing his ideas for electric vehicles and space exploration before most people even knew what he was working on. While everyone else was talking about what was impossible, he was quietly making the impossible inevitable. When he finally revealed what he'd been building, it was too real for critics to dismiss. But protecting your vision through silence isn't just about avoiding negativity, it's about maintaining the purity of your original inspiration. Every time someone questions your vision, you have to spend energy defending it instead of building it. Every time you explain your why to someone who doesn't get it, you dilute your own clarity about what you're trying to achieve. The Stoics had a concept called premeditatio malorum, imagining obstacles before they happen so you can prepare for them. But here's what they also understood. The biggest obstacles to your vision often come from the people closest to you, simply because they love you and don't want to see you fail. Their protection becomes your prison if you let it. Your vision is like a seed. It needs the right conditions to grow: darkness, silence, protection from harsh elements. If you dig it up every day to show people how it's growing, you'll kill it. If you expose it to storms before it's developed strong roots, it won't survive. But if you protect it, nurture it in private, and let it grow strong in silence, it will eventually become impossible to ignore. Here's the beautiful irony. The less you talk about your vision, the more powerful it becomes. While everyone else is busy discussing their plans, you're busy executing yours. While they're seeking validation for their ideas, you're building proof of concept. While they're explaining why their dream is going to work, you're making your dream work. Your silence around your vision isn't secrecy, it's strategy. It's understanding that not everyone deserves access to your dreams. It's knowing that your vision is precious and needs to be guarded until it's strong enough to defend itself. It's recognizing that the people who truly support you will support you, regardless of whether they understand your vision, and the people who don't support you will find reasons to doubt you, no matter how clear you make your plans. The world doesn't need another person with a great idea. The world needs people who can turn great ideas into reality. And reality is built in silence, through consistent action, protected from the well-meaning doubt of people who can't see what you see. Number 7. Focus builds discipline. Let me tell you something that might hurt, but will definitely help. You don't have a motivation problem. You don't have a willpower problem. You don't even have a discipline problem. You have a focus problem. And once you fix your focus, discipline becomes automatic, willpower becomes unnecessary, and motivation becomes irrelevant. Here's the brutal truth about discipline that nobody wants to face. It's not about forcing yourself to do things you don't want to do. That's not discipline, that's torture, and it never lasts. Real discipline is about focusing so intensely on what you want that everything else becomes background noise. It's about making your goals so vivid, so compelling, so present in your mind that choosing them over temporary pleasures becomes the obvious choice. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius didn't wake up every morning forcing himself to rule an empire. He focused on his duty, his purpose, his vision for Rome, until fulfilling that responsibility became as natural as breathing. He wrote, "In the morning when thou risest unwillingly, let this thought be present. I am rising to the work of a human being." That's not motivation. That's focus so clear it creates its own discipline. Think about the areas of your life where you're already disciplined. Maybe you brush your teeth every day without thinking about it. Maybe you show up to work consistently. Maybe you take care of your family without needing willpower. Why? Because your focus is crystal clear on the consequences and benefits. You're not using discipline, you're using clarity. The reason most people struggle with discipline is that they're trying to use it in areas where their focus is scattered. They want to get in shape, but their focus is on how hard exercise is instead of how good they'll feel when they're fit. They want to build wealth, but their focus is on how long it takes instead of the freedom it will create. They want to develop skills, but their focus is on the discomfort of learning instead of the power of mastery. James Clear, who studied habit formation for years, discovered something revolutionary. People don't rise to the level of their goals, they fall to the level of their systems. But what he really discovered is that systems are just focused attention made automatic. When you focus intensely enough on a specific outcome, you naturally create systems that make that outcome inevitable. Here's where most people get discipline completely wrong. They think it's about deprivation, about saying no to things they want. But real discipline is about saying yes to what you want most by saying no to what you want now. It's not about restricting yourself, it's about directing yourself. The ancient Stoics understood this at a level that would blow your mind. They didn't practice discipline by forcing themselves to suffer. They practiced it by focusing so intently on their values that living by those values became their natural expression. Epictetus, who went from slave to philosopher, didn't discipline himself to be free. He focused on what freedom meant until every choice that led to freedom became obvious. But here's the secret sauce that changes everything. Discipline isn't built through big dramatic changes. It's built through focused micro-decisions. Every time you choose your long-term vision over short-term comfort, even in tiny ways, you're building discipline muscle. Every time you focus on who you're becoming instead of what you're doing, you're making discipline easier. Navy SEALs don't develop their legendary discipline through some special training that makes them different from other humans. They develop it through focused repetition of small choices under pressure until those choices become automatic. They focus on the mission until personal discomfort becomes irrelevant. Your phone buzzes while you're working. You have two choices: check it or continue working. If your focus is on the immediate gratification of seeing who texted you, checking the phone feels like the natural choice. But if your focus is on the satisfaction of completing your work, ignoring the phone becomes the obvious choice. Same situation, different focus, completely different level of discipline required. Here's what happens when you build discipline through focus instead of force. It becomes enjoyable. You start looking forward to the actions that move you toward your goals, because your mind is focused on the results, not the effort. You stop needing willpower because your choices align with your deepest desires. You stop relying on motivation because your habits carry you forward automatically. The most disciplined people you know aren't superhuman, they're super-focused. They've trained their attention so thoroughly on what matters most that everything else fades into the background. They've made their vision so clear that living in alignment with it becomes effortless. Your discipline isn't failing you, your focus is. Fix your focus, and discipline fixes itself. Number 8. Silence makes you unpredictable. Here's a power move that'll change how people see you forever. Stop being so readable. Stop announcing your every move, sharing your every thought, and broadcasting your every emotion. The moment you become unpredictable through strategic silence, you become infinitely more powerful, more respected, and more magnetic. Think about it. Right now, people around you probably know exactly how you're going to react to any situation. They know which buttons to push to get you angry, which topics to bring up to distract you, which tactics to use to manipulate your responses. You've made yourself so predictable that you've given away all your power without even realizing it. But what happens when you stop playing by those rules? What happens when you don't react the way people expect? What happens when your silence becomes your signature move? Everything changes. People start paying attention. They start respecting your space. They start wondering what you're thinking instead of assuming they already know. Sun Tzu, the ancient Chinese strategist who wrote The Art of War, understood this principle at a level that would revolutionize your life. All warfare is based on deception. Hence, when we are able to attack, we must seem unable. When using our forces, we must appear inactive. When we are near, we must make the enemy believe we are far away. When far away, we must make him believe we are near. Now, I'm not saying life is war, but I am saying that keeping people guessing about your next move gives you a massive strategic advantage in every area of your life. Business, relationships, personal growth, everything. The Stoic philosophers mastered this art of strategic unpredictability. They would often respond to insults with silence, to praise with humility, to challenges with calm acceptance. People never knew what to expect, which made the Stoics incredibly difficult to manipulate or control. When you can't predict someone's reaction, you can't control their behavior. Here's what most people don't understand about predictability. It's a prison. When everyone knows exactly how you'll respond, they stop respecting your responses. When people can anticipate your moves, they can counter them before you even make them. When your patterns are obvious, your power becomes limited. But unpredictability through silence, that's a superpower. When you don't immediately respond to provocations, people don't know if you're planning something, dismissing them, or operating on a completely different level than they expected. That uncertainty works in your favor every single time. Let me give you a real-world example. Imagine someone tries to start an argument with you. The predictable response is to argue back, defend yourself, or get emotional. But what if you just looked at them calmly and said nothing? What if you smiled slightly and walked away? What if you responded with complete silence and then changed the subject 5 minutes later? Suddenly, you're not playing their game anymore. You're playing by your own rules, and that makes you dangerous in the best possible way. The most successful negotiators in the world use silence as their secret weapon. After making an offer, they stay completely quiet and let the other person fill the silence. Most people are so uncomfortable with quiet that they'll make concessions just to break the tension. But the person who's comfortable with silence, they hold all the cards. But here's where this gets really interesting. Your unpredictability doesn't just affect how others treat you, it changes how you see yourself. When you stop being reactive and predictable, you start becoming creative and strategic. Instead of automatically responding to situations, you start choosing your responses. Instead of being controlled by circumstances, you start controlling your relationship to circumstances. The ancient Stoics had a practice called negative visualization, imagining different scenarios and preparing multiple responses. This mental flexibility made them unpredictable because they weren't locked into one way of thinking or reacting. They could adapt to any situation while maintaining their core principles. Your silence creates mystery. Your unpredictability creates respect. Your refusal to be easily read makes people want to understand you better. In a world where everyone overshares, overreacts, and over-explains, the person who keeps their cards close to their chest becomes infinitely more intriguing. Think about the people you most respect and admire. I guarantee they share this quality. You never quite know what they're thinking or what they'll do next. They don't wear their emotions on their sleeves. They don't announce their plans to everyone. They don't react predictably to every situation. That mystery is part of what makes them magnetic. Your predictability is costing you power, respect, and opportunities, but your strategic silence and calculated unpredictability, they're about to make you unstoppable. When people can't figure you out, they can't control you. And when they can't control you, they have no choice but to respect you. Number 9. Focus creates true victory. Here's the final truth that separates real winners from everyone else pretending to win. Victory isn't about beating other people. It's not about having more money, more followers, or more recognition than the next person. True victory is becoming so focused on your own path, your own growth, your own purpose, that other people's success or failure becomes completely irrelevant to your sense of achievement. Most people are playing a game they can never win because they're competing in arenas that don't even matter. They're trying to outdo their neighbors, impress people they don't even like, and achieve milestones that someone else defined as important. But while they're busy comparing themselves to others, focused people are competing with only one person, who they were yesterday. Marcus Aurelius, who literally had everything, power, wealth, the respect of millions, wrote something that reveals the secret of true victory. Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. He understood that external victories are temporary, but internal victories are permanent. The reason most people never experience real victory is that their focus is scattered across 1,000 different battlefields. They want to be rich and famous and respected and loved and healthy and successful and influential. But focused people understand something that changes everything. When you try to win at everything, you end up winning at nothing. Real victory comes from choosing one primary focus and pursuing it with such intensity that everything else becomes secondary. It's about saying no to good opportunities so you can say yes to great ones. It's about being willing to be mediocre in areas that don't matter, so you can be extraordinary in the areas that do. Kobe Bryant understood this better than almost anyone. He didn't just want to be a good basketball player. He wanted to be the greatest basketball player who ever lived. His focus wasn't on being well-rounded, it was on being unmatched in his chosen arena. He didn't care if people thought he was obsessed. He didn't worry about missing social events or other opportunities. His victory was defined by one metric: basketball excellence. But here's what focus really creates. It creates fulfillment. Most people achieve external success, but feel empty inside because they never focus deeply enough on anything to experience mastery. They're always chasing the next goal, the next achievement, the next validation. But focused people experience something different, the deep satisfaction that comes from knowing you've given everything you have to something that matters. The ancient Stoics called this eudaimonia, human flourishing. Not happiness in the sense of feeling good all the time, but the deep contentment that comes from living in alignment with your highest potential. You can't achieve this through scattered effort. You can only achieve it through focused dedication to becoming who you're capable of becoming. Here's the paradox of true victory. The moment you stop caring about beating other people, you become unbeatable. When your focus shifts from external competition to internal development, you enter a game where you're the only player. You can't lose because you're not playing against anyone else. You're playing for your own growth, your own mastery, your own fulfillment. Think about the people you truly admire, not the celebrities or social media influencers, but the people who've achieved something real and lasting. They all share this quality. They were so focused on their craft, their mission, their purpose, that they transcended competition. They didn't beat other people. They became incomparable. Your victory won't look like anyone else's victory because your focus shouldn't be on anyone else's path. The moment you start measuring your progress against someone else's journey, you've already lost sight of your own destination. Real victory is deeply personal. It's the quiet satisfaction of knowing you've become who you set out to become. But here's the beautiful thing about focused victory. It's contagious. When people see someone who's truly focused, who's clear about their purpose, who's not distracted by what everyone else is doing, it inspires them to find their own focus. Your victory becomes a gift you give to the world, not because you're showing off, but because you're showing what's possible. The world doesn't need another person trying to be everything to everyone. The world needs people who are willing to focus so intensely on their unique contribution that they become irreplaceable, people who are so committed to their own growth that they inspire growth in others. People who understand that true victory isn't about winning against others. It's about becoming the fullest expression of who they're meant to be. Your focus is your path to victory. Not victory over others, but victory over the scattered, unfocused version of yourself that settles for mediocrity. The version that tries to do everything and therefore masters nothing. The version that's so busy looking around that it never looks within. Claim your victory by writing, "My focus makes me victorious." We've covered a lot of ground today, but if you take away just one thing from this entire video, let it be this. Your silence, your focus, and your victory are all connected. They're not separate skills, they're different expressions of the same power. The power to control your attention, direct your energy, and choose your responses instead of being controlled by external forces. The ancient Stoics understood something that modern psychology is just rediscovering. You become what you consistently focus on. When you focus on drama, you create more drama. When you focus on distractions, you become more distracted. But when you focus on growth, strength, and purpose, you become unstoppable. Your silence isn't weakness, it's strategic power. Your focus isn't obsession, it's clarity of purpose. Your victory isn't about defeating others, it's about becoming the person you're capable of being. These aren't just concepts to think about, they're practices to live by. Starting today, I want you to experiment with these principles. Choose one conversation where you listen more than you speak. Pick one goal and eliminate 3 distractions that are keeping you from achieving it. Identify one area where you've been competing with others instead of focusing on your own growth. The person you're becoming through silence, focus, and purposeful action is already inside you. These principles aren't changing who you are. They're revealing who you've always been underneath all the noise, distraction, and scattered energy. If this video changed how you think about success, strength, and achievement, smash that like button. Drop a comment and tell me which principle hit you hardest. Share this with someone who needs to hear this message. Subscribe to this channel because we're building a community of people who understand that real power is quiet power, real strength is focused strength, and real victory is internal victory. Your journey to becoming unstoppable starts with your next choice. Make it count. And to end, leave this final mark in the comments. My silence, my focus, my victory.